Test. 1, 2. Check. 1, 2. Test. 1, 2. 1, 2. Check. 1, 2. 1, 2. Testing. 1, 2. Check. 1, 2.
Oh, Sharina, I have this.
Hello.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's so nice to see such a great group of people this morning. On behalf of everyone here at the Elmhurst Seventh-day Adventist Church and Health Ministry, welcome. We're very glad to see you all. My name is Angela. I am one of a few other people here on the health ministry, so as we go along at any time, if you have any questions about absolutely anything, feel free to come find me. David, you can give a little wave. RJ in the back, and Sharina, I think, Sharina's in the back as well. Has everyone gotten a handout for today with the recipes? I think we're close to running out, but seems that there's some extras on some of the tables. So if you didn't get one, I think there's some up here. As well as there's pencils if you want to take notes on anything. I think they're at the table if you want to jot anything down. And another bit of housekeeping, if this is your first time here, just so you know, the bathrooms are through this door and on the right-hand side. Here at the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we like to promote healthy topics because we feel that the body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. And as such, we need to care and respect our bodies. So this is our community lifestyle center where we like to hold various health events. So this cooking class is one of those. But next month, we have a different topic that's being put on by the health ministry, and that is going to be a focus on mental health. We have Lisa Valiente, who is a clinical social worker, coming to present on mental health, and her presentation is entitled, Changing the Way We Think to Change the Way We Feel, Solutions to Overcoming Depression and Anxiety. And this will take place on Saturday, March 4th at 1:30, which will roughly be after our church potluck. So feel free to join us for church at 11 on the 4th of March, and after church we'll have a potluck, and following the potluck will be Lisa's lecture on overcoming depression and anxiety. Further down the line, April 23rd, I just got the info, we will be having another health lecture done by Mr. Al Backus, who is a retired professor and wellness educator. And he will be speaking on the health laws for the body and the soul. So March 4th for the mental health presentation, April 23rd for the upcoming health presentation. And with that, I think I will invite Pastor to say a few words and open us with prayer as well.
Thank you. Since we believe that we are created by God, we give glory to God, and we always pray. We want to communicate with God, so I would like to pray at the beginning. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much that you created us wonderfully, even though we know that the sin came to this earth and that our bodies are affected with the food, with the environment, with everything that we are surrounded. And biblically, this is called sin. But I pray, Lord, that there are still things that you gave us right at the beginning, what is the best for us. And I know sometimes it's hard to change, but I pray, Lord, that you would give us strength, ability, so that our bodies can be healthy, because in healthy body is healthy spirit. I pray that this time would be valuable to us, and I pray for every person present here that you would protect them, sustain them, give them strength if there's something to be changed, and that they can be a light to the other people. Thank you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I think that I have said all that I needed to say, and with that, we are ready for our first presenter, Tony, who will be taking us through his bread recipe.
Thank you, Angela. You know, when Sharina asked if I would like to talk about bread making, I thought what a privilege and a fun thing to do. Sometimes we're asked to do things that are hard or difficult, but I love bread. I think by definition it's a comfort food, which is the theme of what we're talking about today. So you can put anything from hummus to peach preserves on it. Side note, if you ever want to do a little canning, get started in that. Try apple butter first. That's one of the easy things to do. But bread making, I think on my presentation today, I was thinking about what would help everyone here to make bread that they can enjoy. And I want to follow two themes of information. One is how to easily make a loaf of bread that you can enjoy. And the second line of information is more about how to become familiar with the process, because the more familiar you are with it, the easier it is to adjust things and fine-tune it so that it'll be what you like to eat and what you enjoy to serve to your family. One thing I'll say at the outset about bread making, we have heard, I think most of us here, that baking is more of a science and cooking is more of an art. And while it's true, if you cook on the stovetop and you have vegetables simmering and things going on there, it's easy to either cook those onions a little bit or to caramelize them. You can add seasonings as you go, so that's where the art part comes in. Once we get down lower into that container called the oven, and we're not going to be touching it or seeing it for a while, we know we have to get the proportions of the ingredients correct so that all of the chemical reactions, and that's what they are, happen at the right time and in the right proportion. I would suggest, though, that mindset causes a lot of us to be afraid of making bread. We have a concept that it's kind of a fussy process and it has to be very specific, has to be done to very close tolerances. And that would be true if we were selling this bread nationally and we wanted it to be identical from loaf to loaf. If we went into a restaurant where we knew the bun was a certain way the first time we were there, we would want it to be the same way it is the second time. But I would suggest that part of making bread is to have the mindset that it can be variable, especially in the beginning, and that's okay because it's going to taste good whether you made it this way or that way. And we'll talk about some of the things, the factors that make it turn out one way or another. Bread making, I always think that the main thing you're trying to do with making bread is to capture bubbles. That sounds like a funny concept, but the carbon dioxide bubbles that are formed by the yeast, which is interacting with the flour, those bubbles are what make bread what it is, give it rise. They have to inflate our dough. Once that dough is inflated, we're going to cook it. More chemical things happen. But I want to talk a little bit about a couple of nuggets, so to speak, of information that will help you with your basics. So we're going to talk for a second about making bread simply. On the recipe that you have, one thing I forgot to add, under the ingredients, there should be another line that says 1 cup of extras. And we're going to show you what some of those extras could be. I forgot to add that on there because that's part of what makes bread making fun and enjoyable is to customize it to your taste. The other thing that you could add here in terms of the process would be to, I think I am missing, no, I guess that was the main thing. I wanted to talk about the additives. So just add that on there. Up to a cup of additional ingredients can be added to that loaf. Now, when you look at that, one thing that the nugget that I want to give you to remember, if you lose this recipe, forget about it, or don't have another recipe to go by, how many of you here have heard of the bank Fifth Third Bank? Okay. Have you ever wondered what's up with that name? It's an improper fraction, right? 5/3, it's 1 2/3. I always thought, but I guess that's not a good name for a bank, 1 2/3. But 5-3 tells you the standard classical ratio of mixing flour to water. So if you can remember that, now you know the banking connection. If you can remember 5-3, that will give you the basic proportions, and the only other two things you have to remember are water and flour. I'm sorry, I said the water part with the third, is water and salt. So That's one thing I just want you to remember, that 5-to-3 ratio. This, in the recipe that I have there, is a 7 cups of flour to 5 cups, or 3 cups of water, so a different ratio, and that is adjustable. We're going to talk about how that affects bread making. This is the result of one of those recipes, but it's a large loaf. You could certainly take that recipe and divide it into 2 or 3 loaves. So don't, that was the other piece of information I was thinking about adding to that recipe, is that recipe makes 2 to 3 loaves depending on how big you want them to be. Now that we know kind of the basic ratio, let's look at some of the ingredients that go into bread making and why they go into bread making. And I want to say at the outset, because we're interested in healthy cooking here, the healthiest form of bread is sourdough bread, for a lot of reasons we'll touch on in the next few minutes. We don't have a ton of time to go into a lot of details, but the processes involved in sourdough, and we'll mention a few of those processes, are what make the bread healthier. And the no-knead bread that I've got the recipe for here imitates and uses some of those strategies, if you want to call them that, from sourdough bread making that will help us capture some of the healthy benefits of bread making that we find in the gold standard, which is sourdough bread making, in a way that's a little bit easier for us to make on a daily or weekly basis. So let's start talking about flour, because we want to understand what the healthy ingredients are that go into flour. This bag is King Arthur, and it's a 50-pound bag of flour. It says on here non-GMO verified. It says that it's never bleached. It says that they do not use bromates or other whitening agents. In many countries, Australia and most of Europe, bleached flour is illegal to sell. And the process of the bromates and the chlorine dioxide, other whiteners that are used to make the flour white, are used to make the process quicker. And a lot of our commercial bread making is about speed. It has to be done quickly so that they're not taking, flour naturally will whiten on its own, oxidize and become a whiter color, but that takes time and storage space. So commercially, they've come up with bleaching, but we don't want to use that. So slight difference in cost. The recipes use it the same. My first recommendation is don't buy bleached flour. So unbleached, non-GMO. We're going to talk a little bit about that while we're talking about flours. Flour adds a lot of factors to our bread. I mean, it's the primary ingredient. Yeast is the magic, but flour is the primary ingredient. And the thing that we're looking for when we're using flour in bread making is protein content. And a lot of times, it'll say on the bag, now I don't know if this one does, some of the bags will say on there what the percentage of protein is. And good flour for bread making is usually 13 to 15% protein. That gives it the components that are needed to make gluten. How many of you here have heard of gluten? Gluten is the stringy strands of protein that are going to help us capture those air bubbles. Remember, it's all about capturing bubbles. One of our ways to do that while the dough is rising is to make stretchy strands of gluten. While we're on the subject of gluten, 2 things. Salt actually helps those gluten strands to be able to situate themselves more closely. There's a polarization that repels them naturally, and salt helps them to come closer together. They would say it tightens our dough. So that allows us to capture that bubble more easily. So protein is where we get our gluten from. Now, if you look at a whole wheat flour, because again, we want to eat healthy, whole wheat is a ground up version of the entire grain. If this apple were a grain of wheat, the outside skin would be the fiber. The inside portion that we typically are eating would be the endosperm in a grain of wheat, and the seeds would be the germ in a grain of wheat. So what you're missing with these flours is this outer shell of fiber. And fiber is an important thing. It helps us in many ways. Digestion, the way it helps us to absorb nutrients. Why then, if this flour, this is whole wheat flour here, why wouldn't we just use, as the recipe calls out for a mixture of white flour and whole wheat flour, this is 13.8% protein. So 100 grams of this would have 13.8 grams of protein in it. So why not use 100% wheat flour if it's healthier for us and it has the fiber we're looking for? Fiber is good for us from a health standpoint. It's counteractive in many ways to making bread. Fiber, actually, once it's been ground down in the milling process, is sharp. It will cut the strands of gluten. And therefore, when you make bread strictly out of whole wheat flour, it's not going to rise in the same way that bread made with the endosperm. This is primarily made from the endosperm. The germ will have the nutrients that we're looking for in it, and we're going to talk about those a little bit more too. But so I just wanted to give you an idea that this, in any ratio, our 5:3 ratio, you don't want to go more than as much half. That's about as much as you can try before your bread will just not be able to rise. It's going to be a flatter bread. Healthy, yes. A mixture of these two is the compromise that I go for in my bread making, and that's why the recipe has that mixture. So I wanted to talk a little bit about whole wheat flour. Let's talk now about water. Water is an important ingredient, and if you can use water without chlorine added, like tap water, at least allow the tap water to stand overnight so that that'll dissipate. Use filtered water. That's going to help because we're going to add living organisms into this mixture in the way of yeast. There's also naturally occurring bacteria. The one that is in our gold standard of sourdough and the one that's naturally occurring around us is a lactobacillus bacteria. The reason that that's important in sourdough is it gives off an acid, while the yeast is happy eating the carbohydrates, the starch that's in that endosperm portion of our grain. The acid that has come along for the ride is symbiotic because what it is doing as it is consuming and metabolizing the flour, it's giving off an acid. And that acid is why sourdough tastes a little bit tangy or tart. It also, that acid, protects the white flour yeast, or not the white flour yeast, but the yeast that you're using with this flour from getting other funguses or bacteria that could enter and spoil the dough. Now, going back to the simple, we've talked enough a little bit here now about mixing or of making bread. I would like to try an experiment I've always thought would be of interest to me. And Tony, would you be able to help me? I left a mixing bowl in the kitchen. It's actually a stock pot. And if you could put in there about, 4 cups of water. While he's doing that, I want to talk about mixing dough. A lot of fancy containers you can put dough in to mix. And I like to use a stock pot because all of the dough mixtures and recipes that you're going to read are going to say to cover it with plastic or cloth to keep it moist. Here you've got a lid, so you don't have to use all that plastic. And that has worked well for me. You can try that and see if that works well for you to be able to use a stock pot. I have in here, in the stock pot, just for transportation purposes, I've got a number of what I'd mentioned on your recipe that you might want to add to your bread making. Thank you. So what the experiment to show you, how many here think that you could make bread without a recipe? I would suggest to you that's not true. What are the 4 ingredients that go into bread making? I talked about them earlier. Water. And the 4th one, the magic ingredient, is yeast, which I forgot to bring today. So we're going to have to pretend it's here. But that's okay. We've already made the bread for us to try to eat. But what I would like to do is have you, as the people watching this process, I have a container here, and I'm going to pour water in it until you tell me to stop. Okay? I'm not measuring it. I'm pouring water in here. Stop? Okay. Now, we don't know how much water's in there, right? It's an amount. I don't know how many cups, 2 or 3, I would guess. I would suggest now is the time when this is liquid to add our yeast. We want to hydrate our yeast, and we would add our salt. How much salt should I add? Teaspoon, I hear? Tablespoon? Tablespoon? What would happen if I didn't have any salt in there? It would be healthier, and it would not be as tight on the gluten strand, so it wouldn't rise as much. It would still be bread you would love in the morning to toast and put some jam on. So I'm going to tell me when to stop with the salt. Okay. Now, the third ingredient, which I don't have, is yeast. So I'm going to have to pretend that I have yeast here. And I just use active dry yeast. The yeast that you find in sourdough bread is a naturally occurring yeast. All of the flour that we buy, especially the natural flours like rye. I should mention too, while we were talking about flours, in addition to regular wheat flour, there are a lot of substitutes that are considered healthier because they have a lower gluten content, like kamut and einkorn, spelt. These are other flour substitutes that can be used to make bread with. They're going to rise less. They're not going to rise as much as if we use this type of flour, but still healthy alternatives. Now, we've got our water, we've got our salt. I'm going to pretend this is yeast now. I won't open it. How much yeast? Is that enough? Too much? Yeast, I will say, can be in a recipe like this, anything from 1/4 teaspoon to 3 teaspoons, which is a tablespoon. So you're probably wondering why all the differences in the amounts of yeast, and why not be more specific about this? What ingredient are we missing? We've got our yeast, right? We've got our salt, got our water, flour, right? Okay. Now, this bag's open, so I'm going to use this one. Some unbleached Sarasota flour, and we're going to need to mix this. Now, those of you that have a stand mixer, I'll tell you a story. When I was growing up, my mom was a good cook. Of course, every young boy thinks their mom's a good cook. And she would be making dough, and as she got older, she would say to me, "You mix it. I'm too tired to mix it." So she'd hand me a mixing device. Now, who among you would say this is a mixing spoon? It's a mixing spoon, right? This is a mixing spoon. Now, what I found out is that leverage, when I was young, I remember being at a camp where they mixed Kool-Aid with a canoe paddle. I thought that was the coolest thing. So now when I mix my bread, I can imagine I'm going down the stream in the canoe. But it does help to have more leverage. So if you don't have a stand mixer, you can use something larger like this, or a large mixing spoon, or do it in halves so that it's easier on your arms and hands. Because it can, I usually make multiple recipes, and it can be difficult to mix all of that together. All right, now, we're going to take some flour. You guys are making this bread. I'm just adding the ingredients. So I am going to start adding flour. There's one, whatever that is. I don't even know how many are in here. Should I add another one? Yes? Let's pause for a moment, because this is critical, and this is something I want you to get familiar with. You know, this is knowing your bread dough, is the consistency or texture of the dough. So we're going to check this occasionally. We've put in 2 of those cups, whatever amount that is, and I don't know if you can see this, but we're starting to mix this up. It is hydrating the flour. It's starting to combine. People that are really interested in bread making have very specific ways to describe the dough. It's shaggy, it's wet, it's sticky, it's various things. This would be a wet, sticky dough at this point. Who says I should add more flour? Think so? A little more? Okay. You guys are telling us what to do here, so I didn't add a whole one. I'm going to mix it a little more. while we're talking about mixing, let's talk about gluten. We're always worried about gluten content because some people, there is celiac disease. Has anybody heard of that? That's where that's an autoimmune disease. Your body recognizes those gluten strands, sends out an attack squad that ends up attacking the insides of your intestines and can cause bleeding, perforations. Thankfully, on one report I read, only about 1% of the people have that, but no fun for them. But there's also non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So a lot of people are sensitive to gluten, not to the same degree, but it still causes problems. Now, how are we looking here? What do you think? A little dry? Maybe I didn't mix it well enough. Let's try. Okay. I think he's right. It's probably a little dry. Now, if we were in our kitchen, we would probably take this out and knead it a little bit, at least do the overlap method of kneading it to combine those ingredients a little more thoroughly. I'm not going to take time to do that here. But I would submit to you that this will make perfectly, if it had real yeast in it, would make perfectly fine bread. With that casual of a measuring of the ingredients that went into it. Something you would enjoy. It would smell wonderful cooking in the oven. It would come out and you'd go, that's a good thing for me to eat. You'd want to put something on it, oil, butter, whatever you have, a jam, whatever you have in mind. And I know from experience, in 2019, we went through 6 of these bags of flour for our fellowship lunches. So you start to develop a familiarity with what the dough looks like, and that dough looks good enough. I can guarantee you that'll turn into a passable, good enough bread, okay? The question is what you're in your mind. It didn't look exactly like the picture. It didn't raise exactly. My point of that demonstration is that I don't think you should get too rigid about your bread making. Have fun with it. Relax, add some ingredients, and have fun with it. Now, what do you add? Whole wheat's one of my favorite. Wheat berries. Farro is a similar product. These are, if you go and buy the Red Mill product, that's like $8, $7 or $8. If you go one aisle over to where the Indian food is, this is the Zayed brand, and I think I paid $2.99 for this, so it's about half of the price. Same with any of the other products. Wheat, cracked wheat, bulgur wheat. I like to sprinkle that. When I made this loaf of bread, while it was still wet before I put it into the oven, I dusted it with some of the cracked wheat. And I did that on the pan also. We're going to show you that process in a minute. I've got my gloves here and I forgot to put them on. I'm sorry. Now, the other things that you could add are endless. Pumpkin seeds, flower seeds, cranberries. Some people add cheeses. There is also a nice, convenient way to do it with a good mixture. This has combination of rye, wheat, triticale, oats, oat bran, barley, brown rice, flaxseed. So you're getting it all in one combination here. Not more than about 1 cup. In our quest for bubbles, we have to make sure that what we put in there is not too heavy because those bubbles are lifting weight. It's literally lifting weight. And if we have too many things inside of there, it's not going to be able to lift them and you're going to get a flatter bread. So you've got to be careful with how much you add in terms of weight. I added to this loaf 1 cup of the wheat berries and 1 cup hydrated. I let them sit for about 8 hours in a cup of water. But you don't have to add anything. These are just ideas. 1 cup of the cereal combination. So if you get a chance to try this bread, it'll have both the wheat berries and the cereal in it. Going back to the gluten concept or question, that there are things that are bad in bread for us today. Bread is very different today than it was 100 years ago. Part of it, as it says here, non-GMO, a lot of the bread comes from flour that has the wheat has been modified. There is a common strain now called dwarf wheat that has a high gluten content, high protein content, but it's not good for digestion. Same is true with our processes. I like to think of bread making as a combination of the processes and the products. So we're picking good products, unbleached, non-GMO, maybe going as far whole wheat, some whole wheat, maybe is going as far as ancient grains, the spelt, the einkorn, etc. But also, the other thing we can imitate about our gold standard being the sourdough is how much time we give the process. This is one reason I like the no-knead recipes like you have a combination of here. One, I don't spend as much time on it, but secondly, it gives the process, when we use commercial yeast, it does not have naturally, when you use sourdough, it's starting from yeast that are present in the grain and in the air. When we're using a commercial yeast and a commercial flour, you don't have the same types, the random spread of different strains of yeast, and you have a lot lower concentration of that bacteria that you find in the sourdough. So by giving our dough a longer time to proof or rise, gives the environment more time to add that lactobacillus. It gives more time for the process to go slowly, during which we can have a pre-digestion of many of the components, even some of the gluten, to help reduce the effects for people that are gluten sensitive. So be careful with the process. If you see a recipe that you can, from start to finish, have bread in 2 hours, you're probably going to end up with a product that's more difficult to digest for people that are gluten sensitive. So look for recipes that take more time. And if you want to experiment with sourdough, we can talk about that again another time. That's a whole another conversation. You make your own starter. I had my own starter for a while and had that, I don't know, it wasn't quite 10 years, but it was living in my refrigerator for a long time. But I've found that for me, this is a better compromise to focus on the processes and use some processes that are slow and long-term, like it is with sourdough making, and pick the right type of wheat, be patient with the process, and I will get some of the added benefits that result from that extra time. Let's see if there's anything else. Oh, here's another fun ingredient, granulated or powdered onion. I think that adds a nice flavor to your bread dough, so that's one of the additives I didn't mention. Now, we talked about making the dough. You saw how simple it can be, and I hope you feel that that's something that you can do. I typically cook the bread dough on a flat sheet, but you could put it in a Dutch oven. Moisture is the big thing that determines how your crust will turn out. The more moist it is, the more crusty it'll be. I use this instead of an enclosed oven, or an enclosed Dutch oven or container. And I want to show you what that dough looks like. Where's my container? Tone, would you grab that? I've got a container that I made last night, because I usually make dough that's no less than 12 hours is how long it's going to set before I even think about baking it. And 18 to 24 is a common amount of time that I give it. This, okay, they're telling me I'm going long. Sorry about that. I'm going to wrap this up real quickly. But I wanted you to see the whole process, so visually when you're doing this, you won't feel intimidated like I'm not doing it right, it doesn't look right. Be flexible with the way it looks. The bread dough we mixed up, if we were to let that sit now for 12 to 14 hours, it would look like this. Now, I would suggest to you that's probably more loose than most people think of as bread dough. After I made that dough, took it out of the container, cleaned it, and coated it with oil, a spray oil. I did that. It's very important to manipulate this dough as little as possible so we don't break our bubbles. And it also makes it easier to pour onto this pan. I'm not taking out with my hands, I'm pouring it. So I'm going to show you that process. And as we start it, I'm just going to tilt it, and I'm going to be slow with it because I'm trying to not disrupt the bubbles that have formed in the dough. And as it's starting to come out, it's starting to hit the pan here. I'm going to raise the pan, or the saucepan that contains the dough, and I'm going to slightly rotate that pan towards you. Now, if you notice, very easy to clean. It's almost a complete release of the dough that was in that container. So very easy to release, and the shape, I think you'd agree, is adequate. We don't have to do much to make it a different shape. Now, we can, if we want to, we could shape it. I'm going to bake this so we can eat it here later while the other presenters are presenting. But you could, if you do, I would never fold it over to flatten out those bubbles. Just work by working the borders of that dough, tucking it in if you want it to be taller. Because again, I've got a lot of wheat flour in here, a lot of that bran is cutting those gluten strands. Now we have a little bit taller. Ciabatta, the Italian word for slipper. Did you know that? That kind of looks like a slipper. So we're going to preheat our oven. We're going to pop that in there at a high temperature. I usually start at about 425 degrees for about half an hour and then turn it down to 375. This is almost a little bit on the light side. Let it go brown enough that you know it's cooked through. And then take it out, it's going to continue to cook when you first take it out. So let that continue to cool off for 45 minutes. It's hard to resist cutting it and eating it. But other than that, have fun with your bread making. Don't let it intimidate you. Some of the information you might want to dig into deeper, but I would suggest start with the basics, make some bread, have fun with it, and then go from there. And thank you for your time. I'm going to need some help taking everything off of here. I'm sorry? Okay. Oh, thank you, David.
We'll just take a minute here and get everything out of the way, bring up our next presenter's items. So if you have any questions at any point for the presenter or anybody, feel free to ask. You can interrupt any one of us and ask. Yeah.
I know I'm over on time. Does anybody have a quick question?
Any questions for Tony?
Natural yeast.
Yep.
Repeat the question.
How to collect it, how to use it.
Okay.
Stay away from it for this process.
No, natural yeast is wonderful. Yes.
Repeat the question.
Yes, okay. So the question was, what about natural yeast instead of the commercial yeast we buy? Natural yeast is all around us. It lives on the flour, especially like rye flour. That's how you start your own sourdough starter. A starter is simply a culture of growing yeast. You can do that to imitate lactobacillus creates the acid that protects those yeast that are naturally occurring, but you have a wide range of yeast varieties that are in the air and on the grain. Take your flour, rye flour, mix it with some pineapple juice. That'll give the acidic protection for those to grow. And usually in 3 or 4 days, you'll start to see some bubbling and some activity. Once you have that culture, you have to feed it. Go online, you'll see instructions on how to feed that. But you're going to add, when it's new, you'll probably add 1 or 2 teaspoons. Let it grow to double size, pour off half of it, add a couple of more till it gets growing vigorously. After that point, you'll be able to use that starter in combination with your flour, but that's for sourdough, so it's going to be a much longer process. Not a hard process, just a lot more time consuming. Does that answer the question? Okay. But yeah, natural yeast is a good way to go. It's the best way. It's really the best way. Anybody?
Thank you, Tony. So next up we have Angela with our black bean soup. So we are ready for you.
Excuse me. All right, hi everybody. So as the other Angela said, today I'll be showing you my black bean soup. And for a little bit of context, part of the reason that I chose this recipe, one, I think it's delicious and I think it very much fits comfort food for me. But another reason was a lot of times when I think of comfort food, I think of recipes that kind of have a lot of ingredients, a lot of steps. They're a little bit more elaborate. And I know we're all super busy, always having a million things going on. So I wanted to pick something that was really simple, really easy and quick to make, and with ingredients that most of us have in our pantries. So that's part of the reason I chose this recipe. And kind of a double-edged sword there. Because it's so easy, I don't have much to show you today. So apologies for that. But I got you, Rocky. But yeah, like I said, this is one of my favorite recipes. And another reason why I like it so much is it's so easy to customize. So if you have a bunch of people in your house, everybody likes something different, it's super easy to customize to whatever you like. It also has a lot of really good health benefits. So the black beans are a great source of protein. So for a lot of us here might be vegetarian or vegan, and the black beans can be a really great way to get the protein that we might be missing from animal products. And black beans also have a lot of fiber, which is also really good for us. And I use rice in this soup as well. So the combination of the black beans with the protein, the rice gives some carbohydrates, and then if you top it with avocado or guacamole or maybe a quesadilla on the side, you get a really nice balance of carb, protein, and fat to help you stay full for a long time and make it, a full meal. So, like I said, the ingredients are all things that most of us have in our pantries at home. So I start pretty basic with my vegetables. So I've just got an onion, and then I've got two types of peppers here. So I've got a bell pepper, and I have a poblano pepper. So this is one of the first ways that you can customize this. You can do whatever peppers you like. I really like the combination of bell pepper and poblano. I think most of us like the sweetness of bell peppers, but poblanos give a really great flavor without a lot of heat. And bell peppers also have a lot of antioxidants and a lot of vitamin C. But with the peppers, if you like more spice, for example, maybe you add a jalapeno or a serrano. So you can change it up however you like, depending on the flavor and the spice you want from the peppers. So what I'll usually do is I'll dice these guys up and get them into a stock pot with some olive oil, and I'll saute them for about 5 to 7 minutes until they're nice and soft. So the next thing I'll add is garlic, because it gives great flavor. And the reason I add the garlic not in the beginning with the rest of the vegetables is because garlic cooks really fast. And so if I added it with the vegetables in the beginning, it would probably burn. So I add it at the end of the vegetables cooking with some spices. And this is another way we can customize this however you like. So the spices I typically use are garlic salt, dried oregano, and dried cumin. And again, those are just my personal preferences, but you can change it up however you want. So I don't like it super spicy personally, but if you like it a little spicier, maybe you add some cayenne or paprika or a jalapeno like I mentioned. You can add maybe turmeric for good flavor, black pepper. With the garlic salt, a lot of times I tend to cook pretty low salt for health reasons, but I do use garlic salt in this recipe because I find that the beans need a lot of seasoning. But if you are looking to cook low salt, you could use garlic powder instead. So that's another way you can just customize however you like. So I'll have all my veggies all cooked and all seasoned. And then it's really, really simple. So I'll just add my black beans. So I use 4 cans of black beans just from the grocery store. And part of the reason I like this recipe is the proportions are really easy to double or to make a half batch, whatever you need to do. So for me, I like the combination of just 4 cans of beans and 1 carton of stock, but you can do whatever you like. And again, these are ingredients that a lot of us have in our pantry, are very inexpensive to get at the grocery store. So I'll just add in my 4 cans of beans, my 1 carton of broth, and I like to use a half cup of rice. And that's all I put in the soup. So a few other modifications you can make to customize. You can totally change up the beans however you like. If you want a little bit more of a chili, maybe you add some kidney beans or pinto beans, or if you want that kind of more chili, like meatier type texture, you could add some vegan chorizo or another plant-based meat substitute if you like that type of a texture. You could also use, so I have jasmine rice, which is a white rice. You could also use brown rice, which whole grains are healthier for us than the white rice. But for the purposes of this recipe, where I like it to be a really quick, get dinner on the table really quickly, I like the white rice just because it cooks so fast. But you can definitely add brown rice. You just increase the cooking time so that the rice can cook. And with this combination, it turns into a pretty thick soup. So it's another way that you can customize it if you like it thicker or thinner. So if you like it a little thicker, you can add more rice, or you could mash the beans, or you could puree some of the soup. So there's lots of different options to get it thicker. And you can also get it thinner by taking out the rice or using less rice, not mashing or pureeing the beans. So you can totally play with it to get whatever texture and consistency you like as well. And so that's it for the soup. So once I've cooked the veggies, I'll just add in the rest of the ingredients, bring it to a boil, and simmer it for about 15 minutes so the rice cooks. But that's all it is. It's really, really simple. And so the other thing that I wanted to show you that I think is really fun is the toppings that you can put on top, because you can definitely eat the soup just plain, but I think it's a lot better and a lot more fun with toppings. So I have here, I don't know if you can see, but I have a bunch of different topping ideas here. And this is one thing I really like to do. Like I said, if you have everybody in your house wants something different, or yeah, I don't know if you can see it. But yeah, so if everybody wants something different, and especially if you have little kids, this muffin tin way can be really fun to get the toppings out there, let everybody pick what they want. So I have some crushed tortilla chips, I have some diced onion, diced avocado, which as I mentioned gives you some really good healthy fats. I have some sliced green onions, some diced tomatoes, some diced jalapenos if you like the heat. I have some corn kernels, some lime wedges, some cilantro, just some store-bought salsa. And then I have some shredded cheese and some sour cream here, just to note that these are actual dairy, so these are not vegan, if anybody wants to try them. But so these are just some ideas of toppings. You could do a million other things, but I think it's really fun to do, like I said, especially with little kids, to do the little muffin tin. Everybody can pick whatever they like and customize it however they like. So like I said, it's a really simple recipe, so I'm sorry I didn't have more steps to show you, but I hope you have fun trying it with the different toppings once we're all done. Awesome. Yeah. What was that? Yeah, you could use cooked rice. I would think you would just add it at the end. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's a good way to get around the brown rice cooking time. Maybe you add in cooked brown rice at the end. Yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't think of that. Awesome. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. That was awesome. Now we are making our way for Sharina, who is going to do a healthy mac and cheese recipe. And I just wanted to make one note on Angela's black bean soup. When we're sometimes transitioning from a diet that includes meat to a more of a plant-based diet and getting rid of meat, there's many health benefits to a plant-based diet, a lot of cardiovascular benefits, it lowers your risk of diabetes, and there's a whole host of things that I can list when you're switching to a plant-based diet. But one thing we want to be aware of is we want to make sure that we have complete proteins in our plant-based meal. So amino acids are the building blocks of proteins, and there's something called essential and non-essential amino acids. And the essential amino acids are the ones that we're going to get from our diet versus the non-essential that your body can actually make. So there's 9 essential amino acids, and while beans are an excellent protein source, when we add in the rice and beans together makes a complete protein. So it's always good to kind of have in mind to incorporate various proteins in our meal and not just one source. That way we're actually getting all 9 of those essential amino acids. So wanted to give that little tidbit as we're getting ready for Sharina. And then I can also mention cilantro, which is an awesome herb. Herbs in general are so healthy for our bodies. And cilantro is one of those that really detoxifies the liver. So we're living in a world with a ton of toxins, basically a soup of toxins. So anytime you can add in those great herbs, cilantro, parsley, oregano, especially when they're fresh, you're really going to give your liver and your intestinal system all of that support. How are we doing, guys? Good? All right. So I will hand the stage over to Sharina.
Hello, everyone. Ooh, what a nice welcome. Thank you. So I'm going to tell you something. I'm a bit of a teacher. So we're going to take a quick stretch break. Go ahead and please stand with me. We're going to stand real quick. We've been sitting for a while, so it's good to just move. You can just turn over to your left, wave to your neighbor over on your left, and if there's no one there, wave to the wall. And then go ahead and turn over to the other side, wave to whoever's there. You don't know their name, that's fine. And then come back over here. Just reach up. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you touch your toes because I don't want. You didn't sign waivers, so that's why. And just bring it down. Thank you. All right. Wonderful. So I don't know if it's possible to get, oh, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and plug in that extension cord. So for the recipe that I'll be going through, it's a sweet potato mac and cheese. Another quick little fun fact, I'm from the South. So for any of my friends from Tennessee, you might be thinking, Sharina, you can't make mac and cheese healthy. That's the point. So we're going to do our best. And as we go through it, just emphasizing that when we're talking about comfort foods, comfort is kind of a relative term, right? It's what makes you happy. If you're eating celery and that makes you happy, you can have all this. I will give you mine. That's fine. But if you're trying to just do a childhood favorite recipe, spice it up a little bit while not making it so drowning in other things that you often wonder if you've made bad life decisions, we want to at least attempt it. So let's go through a few things. Now, I'm going to first begin by remembering what is my first step. So when I was going through this, I will say that as far as what ingredients I have, I'll go ahead and lay them out for you. First thing is, I use this kind of garlic. I did have whole cloves of garlic, but I'm very lazy, so I prefer to do whatever is already done for me. But if you are already great with cutting up whole garlic, go for it. You do you. Then we've got some olive oil, and I have a falling lid. That's fantastic. I'm going to put it over here where it can fall safely, and then some milk. Now, you might notice between what's on the recipe and what's over here, there is one thing missing, and it's the tahini. Maybe people were just not wanting to work with me, and that's fine. But I went to 3 different stores. No one had normal tahini. The only thing I could find was that fancy kind where they're trying to be really cool and edgy, and it's like sriracha maple bacon or something, and I didn't want to put that in the recipe. So we're going to go without the tahini. But from what I understand, the tahini adds a very nice, smooth, creamy texture to it. But if you're allergic to sesame, I would hold off on that anyway. I know some people are allergic to sesame, maybe some sesame oils, things like that. So let's go ahead and add some things. We're going to pretend that we already roasted things, as you can see here, because I don't have my Easy Bake Oven to bake all of this for 4 hours. And this questionable little thing is actually the roasted onion and garlic cube. So I don't know, should I show it? It kind of looks like I was very mean to it. So this is our wonderful onion. It smells fantastic. I love the smell of roasted garlic and onion. It's absolutely wonderful to me. I know there are some people that are very sensitive to sulfur, so to them this would not be appetizing. But we already have our roasted onion. We already have our roasted sweet potato. How did I roast it? So, I guess roasting, is that a liberal term? I'm not sure. But I put it in the oven, and first I put it in this tin foil, and then I drizzled it with a little bit of olive oil. I didn't want it to be covered in it too much, so I drizzled it with some olive oil, just crumbled it up, threw it right on in there. And then I left it there for about half an hour. And then I will say for the potatoes, I think I've made them roast for about the same amount of time. I will say the original recipe that I took this from didn't suggest to cut the potatoes up. If you want to cut your cooking time down, I would cut the potatoes up. You get more surface area that the heat can just cover and it cooks it faster. If you put in a whole sweet potato, it might take an hour, but these little cut up, they're not cubes, maybe medallions. I hope my geometry teacher's not watching. 400. 400, 425 actually. I will say 425 is what I did when I first went through this recipe on Friday. And then today I was at just a little bit hotter because I was in a hurry, woke up late. All right, so pasta's already made. We have some whole grain pasta. No, they're not macaroni elbows. I'm sorry for crushing your dreams, but you will be having rotini today. And for all of my pasta aficionados, I'm very sorry if this offends you. Some people get very particular about using the right kind of pasta, and I could not find whole grain elbow pasta, so we're doing rotini. Quick note on the pasta. You can use, as you see in the recipe, you can use whatever kind of pasta you want. If you want it to be a bit healthier though, try aiming for something that adds in the fiber, such as whole grain, or if like a whole wheat pasta. But if you want to add in some protein, which I definitely recommend, you should probably look at the lentils or legume or chickpea kind of pasta. They make a lot of those now in a lot of different shapes, but they were like 3 times my budget for the pasta. So we're gonna enjoy our more subsidized whole wheat pasta today. Let's go ahead and put things into this wonderful blender. So I did not have so I got married, and this was part of like a gift. Thank you. If my husband's watching, hi. But this is something I am still learning to use. So if you have a Vitamix and you see me do something that could potentially break it, please see me later because this was not very affordable, right? I want it to last, and I can't make it last if I break it. So we're gonna try and do this in a way that makes the Vitamix happy. All right, first ingredient that goes in. We're gonna go ahead and put these sweet potatoes in. And I'm gonna pour these in here. Let me also remember to wear my wonderful gloves. They're K, very, very, very fashionable. Yes? Did you peel them? Oh yes, I did peel the potatoes. Thank you for asking because that is a very timely question. We're on like the same wavelength. So when peeling potatoes, I learned this tip just a couple of years ago. And it turns out I've been peeling potatoes in the wrong order. What does that mean? Potatoes, tubers, they grow in the ground, right? They're literally dirty when they come out. That's not a bad thing. But because they have a lot of dirt on the skin, the recommendation, according to the Food Channel and whoever's there, you should peel the potato first and then wash it. Don't wash it and then peel it because you're washing it, you're probably not going to get all the dirt off anyway, and then you peel it. You're just gonna have to wash it again. So I peeled them, then I washed them, and then all the peelings that completely missed the garbage can, my dog got. So nice little treat for him. So the sweet potatoes are going in, and this is more like 2 cups of sweet potatoes. I'm gonna take a couple of them out because we don't want it to be too thick. Otherwise, we could always just add more milk to thin it out, which is completely fine. But I do want to try and make it as close to this so that when you taste it, you'll be able to see for yourself what you might want to change based off of how this version came out. So, nutritional yeast. My wonderful friend, nutritional yeast. Oh, this is a brand new friend that's joining us today because it's sealed for freshness. I didn't open it yet. All right, and for those of you who aren't familiar with nutritional yeast, I would recommend giving it a try if you have a plant-based diet, vegan, vegetarian, because it's a great source of B vitamins. Not that you need to just drink this, but add it, sprinkle it to your salads, sprinkle it to your pastas. I sprinkle it onto my popcorn. I love nutritional yeast on popcorn. Okay, so let's go ahead and add 1/4 cup. Does this measure 1/4 cup? Was I ambitious in my... Okay, perfect. 1/4 cup. If I have any chemists watching, they're probably going to be upset with how I'm trying to measure this, but we are okay. We're not dealing with anything explosive, I don't think. Now let's go for some milk. So this is oat milk. If you, whatever preference you have, go for it. If you prefer a different kind of milk, this is not to say they're not allowed. This is simply what I was able to get that I knew wouldn't cause any kind of nut allergy for today, since we know a lot of people can be allergic to nuts. So I need half a cup of this wonderful oat milk. Ooh, and for anyone wondering, how does oat milk taste? Tastes like oatmeal. So no surprises there. We've got our half cup there. And it says to add a couple tablespoons of more milk. Not sure why it's specifically the 2 tablespoons. I just wait a little bit and see if it's blending. And if it doesn't seem like it's gonna blend, I'll go ahead and add more. I did not personally try out this idea that's in my head. But as far as adding protein goes, I am wondering if maybe you could also sneak in directly into the sauce some cannellini beans or navy beans, just something that in case you're a little worried, you're dealing with people, whether it's physically little ones or the ones that are little at heart, they probably might fight you a little bit when it comes to vegetables like cauliflower or maybe beans or protein or things like that. Try mixing it into the sauce. If it's hidden, out of sight, out of mind, perfect. Okay, tahini, we're gonna pretend that that's in there somewhere because I didn't wanna give you all a strange flavor for today. Now I'm gonna get half a teaspoon of smoked paprika. Now, for anyone who is wondering, can I just use the paprika that's currently in my kitchen rather than the smoked? I don't know, give it a try, let me know how it tastes. I imagine, so this is the fun part about cooking. Since I'm not worried about making a masterpiece like the bread we had earlier, I don't have to worry, at least personally, I don't worry too much if my measurements are off. This is cooking, it's an art and it's a science. If you're wanting to have fun, it's an art. But if you're wanting to get an exact flavor, then I would recommend following the directions to a T. Otherwise, don't stress too much about what you're adding. So, 3 tablespoons of lemon juice. Unfortunately, this is the kind of lemon juice I have, so we're gonna be here for a little bit. As the rest of this comes out. And so what I squeezed out was probably more like a tablespoon, unfortunately, because I did not measure this guy before I brought him down to the show. And let's get the garlic powder, which this is optional. If you don't like a lot of garlic, you don't need to add it. But if you're wanting to try out the garlic, then go for it. Let's go ahead, put this in here. We're going to put now the rest of our whole products. And in case you're wondering, will this blend half of an onion? Yes, it will. Am I doing it in such a way that the Vitamix is upset? I don't know, but it's working, so we're gonna go for it. Like I said, I am still learning the Vitamix rules of the road, kitchen, what have you. So if you have one of these fascinating creatures that comes with like a yellow page size instruction manual, and you want to give me a smaller synopsis because I don't always like to read in the kitchen, I will take it. You're not going to offend me, I promise. All right, let's get the olive oil. If I can open it, perfect. We're looking for a tablespoon. I often wonder, how did we look at this and think, oh, this is a tablespoon, like this will be a unit of measurement. I wonder how that came about. All right, and 1 tablespoon. As you see in the recipe, this is optional, so if you're a little worried about adding too much oil, then you could always leave this out. To me, the parts where the oil was most necessary, I didn't even add it to the pasta. I know a lot of people will say, add it to the pasta so it doesn't stick. I didn't add any oil to this pasta, and as you might be able to see here, is it sticking a little bit just because pasta tends to stick as it dries? Yes, but it's not sticking so much that I'm worried it's going to come out in an unrecognizable form. Where I put the oil was when I was roasting the sweet potatoes and the onion, just to give it a little bit more flavor. And then we're gonna go ahead and actually blend this up. I don't entirely trust it, so I'm gonna add a little bit of more milk. My new in-laws, they are chemists, and so they're very good at eyeing something and getting it down correctly. I am not, so this is just me kind of putting things in a bowl and hoping it comes out relatively edible. Probably shouldn't have said that when I'm about to feed you, but we'll survive. Ooh, why was it set on high? That was weird. Okay. It's upset. Okay. Yeah, we can push it in. I'm wondering, will it still be too thick? Let's see. Okay, it's waking up. It's like, we're Sunday, we're supposed to be asleep, we're not supposed to get up until 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. There we go, okay. We're mixing, we're getting there. I used to have a Ninja. I just turned it on, it had low, medium, high. I'm like, yes, you are made for me. This says you can choose high or variable. You can go from 1 to 10, but don't go from 1 to 10 too quickly. But I'm not going to say what too quickly means. So you can tell that there are some days I really like how smooth. I will say, if you're ever wondering, should I change up my blender? This, admittedly, the Vitamix it makes things come out far more smoothly than my Ninja did. But my Ninja also did the job. I didn't care that my smoothies weren't entirely always super smooth, but it did the job. It's a little too thick for me, so I'm going to add just a little bit more of oat milk. You'd be surprised at how much a little goes a long way when it comes to thinning something out. I recently have gotten really into a recipe for salad dressing where I use just hummus and then I thin it out with a little bit of water. I might sprinkle in some lime juice in there, crack some salt into it, and it's wonderful. If you're ever looking for a salad recipe that doesn't have like 12 grams of added sugar, consider thinning out some hummus. So in case anyone can't see it, I'm not hallucinating, I promise. The bottom part is moving. The top part, I don't know, it's kind of reminded me of a sinkhole a little bit. So in terms of ways to not describe food, a sinkhole would probably be on there, but it's okay. I'm going to stop it here, and then I'm going to mix it up with this, because this, I don't remember what this was called. It's just a thing that you shove it into Vitamix. I'm not a spokesperson for Vitamix, in case you couldn't tell. That's what's used to help you get things moving if they're stuck. But I'm going to go ahead and mix it by hand. And then we're going to mix it again without this on. So you can tell it's pretty thick. It's not so thin that you think, oh, from a distance, people aren't going to think that that's some sort of cheesy sauce. But let's go ahead and keep blending this out. And for those of you who may have seen, I removed this and then I stuck this in, because even though blenders are supposed to be dummy-proof at this point to some degree, you probably just shouldn't stick metal objects into things with blades that are still plugged into electricity. All right, we're gonna speed it up, see if it blends a bit more. Hey, there it goes. It's gonna get a little loud, at least from me. You're all probably thinking she's yelling way too loud, so I'm sorry if that's the case. Okay. Smooth enough. Perhaps a little bit too thick. So I'm going to thin it out once more. And just a little bit of a shout out for sweet potatoes. Like I said, I love sweet potatoes. One of my favorite snacks recently has been to just cut them up into medallions and then toss them in a little bit of salt and oil, pop them into the oven, roast them until they're starting to get that glazed look to them because all the sugars inside of it are cooking so nicely, and then I just eat them like that. It's very, very fulfilling, at least to me. Sweet potatoes, they have a lot of health benefits. Angela might share a few of those. I will say One is that they've got a lot of vitamin A in them. They've got iron. Iron, especially for my ladies who have a vegetarian or vegan diet, you need to make sure that you're eating enough iron. That's what helps your blood carry oxygen to the rest of your body. And every time your monthly cycle comes around, if you're iron deficient and you are vegan or vegetarian, you might notice you're getting lightheaded. So kale may or may not be your friend, but you should make it your friend. Also, sweet potatoes. A little tastier than kale, at least to me. Let's go ahead and pour in this sauce. And you'll notice, so there are some other cheese sauce recipes where they use white potatoes, carrots, onions. This isn't actually that dissimilar, as you can see from what we've used. But we don't need the carrots for the sake of the coloring. The sweet potato already does a lot of that for us. Okay, come on out. And like I said, this is a nut-free cheese sauce. I know I have several friends that are allergic to nuts, and so one daunting part about becoming vegan or vegetarian is if they're allergic to the whole nut family, whether it's tree nuts or ground nuts, they can't eat a lot of foods because nuts and seeds are a pretty big part of a plant-based diet. So as far as nuts and this recipe goes, it is a nut-free cheese sauce. Not able to get all the sauce at the bottom, but it's all right. And then we're going to mix this up. I'm flicking cheese sauce everywhere. I'm actually going to switch utensils. Oh, one other good thing about sweet potatoes is that supposedly it helps you improve your memory. I've been eating sweet potatoes for a while. They're not the only thing I've eaten, but a couple of days ago, or was it last week, I was on the phone with my husband and I was asking him where my phone was. And for those of you who didn't catch that, I was on the phone with my husband. I'm like, hon, where's my phone? And he has attitude. I knew what I was getting into, but he was like, I'll just let you figure it out. So whether or not it helps your memory, I'm sure it helps. It is a wonderful, nutritious piece of produce. I think I just need more doses or something, because I'm just glad I'm not leaving my phone in a freezer yet. Maybe that's like 10 years down the road. My boss keeps telling me, enjoy your youth. You don't forget things yet. I'm like, I'm already there. I think there's very little hope for me at this point. We're going to mix this up. Oh, yes, we're making this healthier, right? So we're adding in some broccoli. For anyone who's kind of like, oh, broccoli. You don't have to use broccoli. You can use peppers. I saw some recipes when I was looking for sweet potato topping ideas. I saw some recipes use peppers, tomatoes. You could use cauliflower. I'd probably mix it into the sauce, maybe get a little bit of a different texture to it. You could probably mix in some beans and lentils. But when it comes to trying to healthify a comfort food, take it baby steps at a time. If you're doing this for yourself, you have no restrictions, right? But if you're doing this to try and win someone else over to your side of the culinary arts, then try going one step at a time. Add in a little bit of broccoli. Maybe not the whole thing be broccoli unless you know they love it. But as you can see here, once you're done with the sauce, you just mix it up. It's pretty straightforward, which if you're like me and more than 10 steps, you start to think, maybe I'll tackle this next week, or I'll start on Monday, or I'll start on Wednesday. This is pretty simple. So this is everything there is to this recipe except for that tahini. Like I said, the tahini could probably make this a little bit creamier, but when you sample it, let me know how it tastes. Any questions? Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, for those of you who didn't hear, the suggestion was I could have probably just made my own tahini if I bought the sesame seeds and then put it here into the Vitamix, which you can do. I tried making cashew butter in here one time. It didn't turn out well. The blender quit at some point because it was just too thick. But yeah, awesome. Thank you. Yes, in the back. Oh, would it still be the same as using what again?
Would it still be the same?
Oh, for here?
The normal blender, like. If
Oh,
I
a normal
have one.
blender. I was hearing butter. I'm like, did I put butter in here? A normal blender. Like I said, my Ninja blender did a really good job, and I've made multiple cheese sauces in my Ninja blender, so I wouldn't say that it's this or bust. I would say it's probably good. You might just need to mix it a bit more. You might need to pause and then like scrape down the sides a bit more. But for the most part, I think if it's a blender and it works, it's probably going to make the sauce just the way that you want it. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Feel free to take a stretch before our final presenter comes out here. Kevin, do you want the headset, or are you going to use this mic? Headset? Okay. So I wasn't paying attention to all of Sharina's presentation. I was kind of in and out in the kitchen, but one thing I did notice was the oat milk that she had up here, and I wanted to just make a little note on milk substitutes in general, because I get asked this question very often: what is the best milk substitute? So all milk substitutes try to fortify whatever milk it is, whether it's oat milk or coconut milk or whatever, with some of the key nutrients that we do find in regular milk, and those would be the B vitamins. So you'll often see them listed in the ingredient list for these plant-based milks. And I want you all to be mindful that I think in 9 out of 10 brands, you will find vitamin B listed, or not vitamin B, vitamin B12 listed on these ingredient lists. And sometimes it just says vitamin B12, and other times it will say the form of vitamin B that's there. So be mindful, if it doesn't list the form and it just says vitamin B12, then what is going to be in there is cyanocobalamin, which is a synthetic form of B12. And in your body, it breaks down into cyanide. Cyanide is poison. Now, it is found naturally in foods, but when we're consuming something like this, like, kids drink a lot of milk, so if you're giving them plant-based milks, you don't necessarily want your child having cyanocobalamin in cups and cups and cups of this. So be mindful to look for no vitamin B12 in these milks, or a better form, which would be like hydroxycobalamin, methylcobalamin. Chances are you probably just have to find one that does not contain B12 or does not contain cyanocobalamin. Yes? Say that again?
It has to say vitamin B12, right?
So if it says vitamin B12, then it is the kind that you don't want, because they're trying to hide the fact that they're using the cheap synthetic version of B12 on the label. So if it simply says vitamin B12, they're using the cheap synthetic kind that breaks down into cyanide, which is cyanocobalamin. That's what we do not want. Yes? Yes?
Sometimes I see that the presenters use aluminum.
Yes.
Is that, as I was reading, I don't know much, but is aluminum healthy or not?
So the question is using aluminum in cooking. So I've often thought about doing.
Hello?
Okay, he's testing out his mic. I see this sign over here. So the question was regarding using aluminum for cooking. No matter what we are cooking with or cooking in, cooking on, especially if you're heating food or if the food is hot already, you're going to have interactions chemical interactions with whatever the surface is or whatever that utensil is, or in this case, aluminum foil or an aluminum pan or whatever. The absolute best thing that we can use when we're cooking always is glass, because there's no chemical reaction. Glass is inert, so nothing from glass is going to end up in your food. But when we use something like aluminum foil, the aluminum, as it's heated, it turns color, right? It gets kind of rusty and brown. Well, the chemicals from the aluminum foil are ending up in the food. And this is the case if we're cooking with aluminum pans or something like that as well. So be mindful that when you are cooking, try to always find the better or best, like glass, things to cook on that are less problematic for food. Yes?
How about pergament? The paper, pergament.
Like wax paper?
Parchment.
No, not wax paper.
Parch.
Oh, parchment. So that's basically like wax paper. That one is less problematic unless it's like bleached. So try to find an unbleached version of the parchment paper or wax paper. And the reason why they list the temperature sensitivity, I think once it heats up to higher, not only is there a risk of it burning in the oven, I think above like 425 or 450, but then you're also getting more possibility of it reacting with the food. So parchment paper, wax paper are less problematic than foil, but yeah, better option. Any other questions? Are we good? Yes, Rocky?
Remember she was saying that if you add beans and rice together, that made it complete. Are there any other things that you add together that make it complete? I forget what
We're talking about making a complete protein. Off the top of my head now, I probably couldn't list the combinations, but you can find, the nine essential amino acids and kind of look at different foods and look at their profiles and try to make sure that you have all 9 of those in a good amount when you're, So with beans, I believe they are missing lysine, the amino acid lysine, or they're quite low in there, whereas rice has more lysine, and then it makes it more complete. So if you look at, all of the amino acids and look at different profiles of foods, what you want to do is make sure that the foods that you have a good amount of each one of those 9 in them. Yeah. Yes, another question?
Yeah, the soybean is complete, but there's so much controversy about it.
Yes. Yes, so,
If you can find non-GMO soybean.
right. So the question has to do with soy. Soy is more of a complete protein, that's true. I don't want to take up too much time because we're going to be sampling food, but I did a health nugget a few weeks ago, and if anybody's interested in watching that 5-minute clip, I can give you the link to be able to watch sort of the good and the bad of soy, because that's a really long topic. So I don't want to take up time right now from Kevin, who's so patiently waiting here.
Okay.
All right.
All right. I was about to have her and Sharina sing a duet here. They're both pretty good singers, but no, we'll skip that for today. All right, anyways.
Thank you.
Okay, in this pan, this glass pan, okay, you see all that white stuff in there? It's not soap detergent or, or hand lotion or anything like that. See, it's coconut oil spray, which, coconut oil solidifies unless it gets above 73 or 74 degrees. So once the stuff goes in there, coat the pan good enough. All right, anyways. All right. Don't believe the prep time on this recipe. 30 minutes, don't believe it, okay? Second time making this recipe, and where it says sauce ingredients, okay, that should be filling ingredients, the filling for the, basically this is like making lasagna. Okay, it's basically what it is, but with different ingredients. So All right, and there's 3 different steps. Speaking of aluminum, right here, good aluminum baking pan, except it's coated with something which I don't even know what it is, but maybe it's not aluminum, I don't know. But anyways, so first off, well, you can do this in any order you want, but you want to roast butternut squash. Okay, you can either chop it up, buy them and get the seeds out and chop them up into pieces. And if you do that, you can actually leave the skins on. See, butternut squash, the skins are very good for you, actually. So you can leave the skins on. But the faster, easier way is go to Costco and buy this stuff in the cooler. See, it's already pre-cut, and it's organic. Or a friend of mine told me that you can go to Whole Foods and buy 1-pound bags for $2.69. See, Whole Foods is not that expensive as people think if you know what to buy there. See, the $3.60, that's $2.69 for a whole pound of squash already cut up. So when you roast frozen butternut squash, it is a little bit different. You have to just look it up on the internet, see how to roast, frozen butternut squash, and it tells you. And if you want to make it as a side dish, you don't want to do it for this recipe. Well, maybe you do, but you can put cinnamon in there, mix it all together in a bowl, put it here, and then you just have it as a side dish with cinnamon and a little maple syrup. But I didn't do that for this. I just roasted it with olive oil, salt, and pepper. Okay, so that's that. All right. Then you notice down here, in this column here, it says enchilada sauce. I guess you can buy it at the store. I never bought enchilada sauce at a store, but I suppose they got it. Maybe you could use spaghetti sauce. Maybe after you try the recipe, if you want to experiment around or whatever. But anyways, I made my own enchilada sauce. In the Country Life cookbook, which used to be one of the cookbooks we had back in the 80s when we had a vegan restaurant here in Oak Brook Terrace, so we had our own recipe books. So I made my own enchilada sauce. And all you do is and I got the recipe, I can text it to you or email it to you, but you take diced tomatoes, dump them in a blender. You need 6 cups for the recipe. Then, see here, 365 brand chili powder. It's already mixed up. Put some of that in there. And then you put salt and, you have to saute onions and garlic. And just put this in the blender. Just blend them all up, the diced tomatoes. Put them in a pot. Put the onions and garlic and salt, and that's it. And the chili powder. Cook it all together. Oh, and honey. A few tablespoons of honey. Cook it up. That's it for that. That's the easy one. No, actually, no, because you have to cut onions and garlic too. All right, so get rid of that for now. All right, now this recipe I'm doing today is vegan. Okay, you can use, whatever. You can use regular yogurt or sour cream or, use regular cheese. And so some of the vegan cheeses, some of the meat substitutes are kind of weird. I'm starting to stay away from some of them because when the list of ingredients is that long, I don't even know what half the stuff is. Okay, but this particular vegan cheese that they sell at Costco is actually, I can read all the ingredients. I actually know what they are, see? So, and plus it tastes pretty good and it actually melts pretty good. So there's mozzarella and then there's cheddar, which I got in here. So that's going to be part of it. Okay, so now this is going to be like, and this is from Trader Joe's. It's organic, creamy cashew yogurt alternative. And it's not that much more than regular yogurt. Maybe $1 more, so it's not that bad. All right, and then the other ingredient, El Milagro corn tortillas. They're pretty good, plus it's non-GMO, so I didn't look for organic, but they're non-GMO, so that's good. And if you want to know about GMOs, you should look up this documentary called Genetic Roulette. It's from about 10 or 12 years ago. It's just chilling. It really, a lot of products that are, that was already mentioned that are allowed in our country are banned from other countries. But Genetic Roulette, just look it up. It's about an hour long, and it's really scary what's allowed. All right, and then this also calls for green bell peppers and red bell peppers cubed. All right, well, you can chop up peppers if you want. I do sometimes, but you can go to Trader Joe's and buy them frozen. There's 3 different kinds all chopped up in the freezer. And you have to maybe adjust your cooking a little because when you're sauteing or roasting frozen stuff, you might get a little extra liquid. So just got to play around with it. But these are in the frozen section at Trader Joe's. All right, what else we got? Costco diced tomatoes, 365 brand organic corn, Costco black beans, cumin, Trader Joe's, or whatever. Okay, so just learn where to shop. And cooking healthy and cooking organic is really not that expensive if you know where to buy this stuff. It really isn't. So, all right, so now we're going to start layering this stuff. So just pretend I made the sauce while you're sitting right here, okay? All right, just, where's that blender when I need it? Oh, we already made it, okay. Now here's the mixture. All right. So for this we chopped onions, we cubed bell peppers, we added cumin, a little more chili powder, added some corn, black beans. Okay, now look at it. See, wasn't that fast? All right, it's all mixed up. So the squash kind of, gets nice and roasty and kind of disintegrates and holds everything together. Okay. Now the first time I made this recipe, I followed the recipe pretty much, okay, which is fine. You can do that if you want. But then at church here a couple of weeks ago, somebody gave a speech about proteins, and black beans were the #1 protein and fiber or whatever it said. So and I like black beans, so I decided we're going to add more black beans to this recipe this time because I didn't think there was enough, and I didn't think there was enough squash the only other time I made it. So anyways, so we're already, cooking is, an art or something? Didn't somebody say that? And the thing about this recipe is, see, if you make sure that your filling tastes good by itself, if you'd sit down and, heat it up and have a plate of it, okay, if that's good, and if the sauce is good by itself, then you can't go wrong, see, then the recipe will be good. So don't worry about it. And I did check out, too, that corn tortillas and black beans are not a complete protein because there's not enough lysine in the corn. See, I already learned how to look stuff up, standing back there. All right, so first step. Oh, and here's another thing. I skipped the salsa. See, it says first layer is a cup of salsa. And by the way, it says 8.5 by 11 baking pans. So, you figure that out. You take a piece of paper, put it in there. If it's close enough, it's close enough, see? So this is about, that's 9 by 11. Oh, well, whatever. Yeah, something like that. All right. I never knew that till somebody pointed out to me the other day. I says, what size is this? I says, I'd take a piece of paper and you can see how close you are. Okay. All right. So instead of the salsa, see, the sauce is really good. So I'm going to just use the sauce. So you need 1 cup salsa. Oh, no, this isn't salsa, so forget it. Just put it down there. Okay. Kind of smear it around a little bit. And the nice thing about this, there are 3 layers, see? So if stuff's not even on one layer, maybe it's even on the layer on top. Then you don't have to worry about it. So don't make this too. All right, and then you take the corn tortillas, and it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, see, because they don't fit exactly right. So you put one in the corner, one in the corner. Oh, no, now what do I do? Yes. Put the flat end on the flat part, put that over there. Oh, no, now what do I do? Okay. Now I got to make, see, it's like, it's like one of those puzzles. What do you call those things? Yeah, all right, the bottom layer is a 7-piece puzzle. Okay, there, that's that. All right, now, what's next? Oh, no. Let's flip it over. All right, so there's, top with tortillas overlapping to cover the bottom of the, okay. Spread 1/3 of the vegetable mixture. All right, you know what, since everything's going to be the same anyways, you can use the same cup. All right, so 1/3. All right, close enough. All right, put that. Okay. All right, so just spread it out a little bit. You don't have to get it spread out too much because you'll see why in a minute. Okay. A little more. Okay. All right, now, what's next? Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay. So it says, what does it say, a half a cup or something? 1/2 cup. Okay, so that's a half a cup. So just kind of scoop it out. Just kind of go like this. Because you're going to mix it all up anyways, so. All right. Good enough. Okay. All right, next. Oh no, more enchilada sauce. Okay, we'll just spread this out a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. Okay. All right, 1/3 of a cup of enchilada sauce. Oops. What was it? Half. Whatever. Close enough. Okay. It's about. No, I forget this. I mean, you can, and you don't have to though. Just. Yeah, it's the same thing, but pretty much. Yep. So just see. Now it doesn't really matter. You can't tell what's what anyway, so you don't know if it's spread out or not, so it's okay. All right, now let's just use the mozzarella for this one. We'll put the cheddar on the top. All right, what does it say? Half a cup? Okay, something like that. All right, close enough. Where's the scientists in the room when I need them? Okay. All right. Oh no, now repeat the layer. Oh no. Okay, now what do we do? Same thing. Okay. There's that one. Oh no. Jigsaw puzzle again. Okay, that's good, just like that. See? Pretty soon it gets to be fun. You can even break them in corners and then you fit it like that. See? Little corner. Oh. I should get a job at a restaurant or something. Okay. All right, now 1/3 more of this stuff. I have a feeling this is going to be this. We'll see. Maybe. I know you guys are, you guys were there. Okay. Just get that. Okay. First time I made this, I tried to be too exact, and then after I realized, okay, just mix everything together anyway, so what's the difference, right? All right, a little more for this layer. Okay. All right. Now, oh yeah, this stuff. Okay. Just slap it on there, mix it up a little bit. Okay. All right. Yeah, 1/3 of a cup, a little more. See, and the good thing about the enchilada sauce recipe, it makes extra sauce, you see. Because I don't know, I like extra sauce on everything. And the thing is, even if you overcook it and it gets dried out, you got extra sauce, you see. Kind of brings it back to new. So, okay. Okay, mix it up good. Smear it around, okay. Cover those tortillas, okay. Okay. Oh, look at that. Looks nice. Okay. Beautiful, all right. Now more of this stuff. And then there's also, in the Country Life Cookbook, there's actually an enchilada recipe, where it's vegan, where you make your own cheese sauce, so that one you make with cashews and tahini and pimentos, which gives it the color and a nice little flavor. Okay, next. All right. Let's do that again. Oh no. Oh, look, here's some pieces already. Okay. Okay. Your leftover will each take you later. And we'll just put it in there. Yeah, we don't want us to have one tortilla left over. There. Okay. We didn't want that last tortilla to feel left out, so it feels better now. Okay. All right. Now dump the rest of the stuff. And actually, this stuff's a good meal by itself, too. Black beans and squash and peppers and onions and garlic. Oh, boy. Okay, that's that. Whoops. Stay in there. Okay. Stay. Okay. This is the last layer. More of this. Oh boy, I hope it doesn't overflow. No, it won't. It'll be good. Okay, that. Okay. A little more. Okay. Smear it around. Stay in there. Okay. Okay. What is this? I guess we can call it like Spanish lasagna or something. I don't know. Okay. Smear it around. Oh, boy. You could probably eat this just without even cooking it. Yeah, you could. Why not? But today we cooked some. I cooked 2 of them this morning, so they're... All right, that's that. Now, whoops. You didn't see me lick my fingers. This one's going to my house, so don't, Oh, whoops, I got my... All right. All right. Sprinkle that. A little more. Okay, now we're going to get fancy. Okay, now the orange cheese. Put some of that on. Oh, boy. Yeah. The recipe says mozzarella, but you could use whatever you want, Okay. Okay. Oh, look at that. All right, then put it in the oven for whatever it says on there, except for if you did like I did this morning when you made the ingredients last night, everything was cold when I put it together, so I put it in the oven for 10 extra minutes this morning. Cover it for 10 minutes, and then take the top off, and there you go. All right, that's that. So hopefully the stuff is good that I made this morning. Thank you. All right. Any questions? We only got till 2 o'clock, so don't give me too many questions. Anybody? It's from Trader Joe's. It's organic creamy cashew yogurt. It's organic. It's cashews and coconut cream and tapioca starch. It's pretty clean product. It's good. No, it's good. It actually a little bit, but not much. It's very good actually. I never bought it before until the other day, so it's actually pretty good. All right. Anybody else? See, you got to just experiment. See, yeah. I took a picture on my phone. I can text it to you, but it's from the Country Life Cookbook. There's like 6 ingredients. It's very simple, very fast, very easy. I can write it down. I'll write it down for you. That would be good on a lot of stuff. Anybody? It was called Country Life Natural Foods. It was part of a chain of Seventh-day Adventists. That's the book right there. There used to be about 30 restaurants around the world, and we had one here in Oak Brook Terrace, and then we changed. It was Better Living Natural Foods for about 8 years, and we closed in 1996. So we were a little ahead of our time, and there's not too many Country Lifes open anymore. I think there's a few in Europe, and then there was one in Columbus, Georgia, and that's associated with Uchee Pines. It's a health retreat. But there's not very many more left. But yeah, Country Life Cookbook, that's the one. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Yeah, I did, but I made sure. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I should have just put a baking pan on top. Yeah, I did, but it, I don't know what else to do with that. So, but the foil didn't really touch anything or anything like that. Maybe it's still not the best thing to do, and maybe you don't even need to cover it. I'm going to experiment next time, not even cover it. So, anybody? All right. Thank you. All right. Get me out of here. That's good.
Thank you for the comedy, Kevin. You're awesome. So if you look at your handout, there is one more recipe, because what is a meal without having dessert, right? But this is so simple that it doesn't really, I think, need a demonstration. But it does have some ingredients that may not be familiar to everybody, or one at least, which is millet. And we did talk about millet in one of our previous health presentations, but I will just say that millet is a small grain, and you'll find it in the same section as you would like quinoa or some of the other grains. And it looks like a little pearl. I think on the recipe listed, it says to add 2 cups of water, although I think usually most varieties will add 3 cups, but whatever I had at the time said 2. And then I think there was a little typo. It should say organic, non-alkalized cocoa in there. Organic, non-alkalized cocoa. Yeah, you'll find in the grocery stores often it'll say Dutch or Dutch processed, which is the same as alkalized. So what that means is they actually add some chemicals to make the cocoa less acidic, more alkaline. I think they do this, and they started this originally because the acidity of the cocoa, when you add it to like baking powder, baking soda, it just made things too acidic, and there was some kind of a reaction, so they ended up doing this process. But in the process of making this Dutch cocoa or alkalized cocoa, you're also getting rid of any nutritional benefits of cocoa, which there are some. It's got antioxidants and flavonols, the flavonols especially, which are very nutritious. So I personally always try to avoid these Dutch processed, Dutch and alkalized cocoas, and always go for the non-alkalized. And when it's non-alkalized, you will see that it says non-alkalized. It does taste a little bit different. I think it's richer in flavor. The Dutch cocoa, alkalized cocoa, is a more mild flavor, usually lighter in color as well. So there is a difference, but obviously non-alkalized is going to be the healthier of the two. And I think that will conclude our afternoon of presentations. If you give us a minute, we're going to set up all of the food for your tasting pleasure. There should be enough for everybody to go around. And if you do have any other questions, again, feel free to find any one of us. We're going to be hanging out here as well. So thank you very much. Yes, Pastor. Yes, so we will have a presentation March 4th. Excellent. March 4th, we'll have a presentation on mental health, which will be given by Lisa Valiente. She's a clinical social worker. And this presentation will focus on overcoming depression and anxiety. So that is our next event for the health ministry. And then we do have April 23rd, a health presentation on kind of general guidelines of health principles by Al Bacchus. So we hope to see you again. In the future, we will have more health, or not cooking classes as well. And if there is anything that you would like to see from us, we're definitely open to suggestions. I was just having a conversation in the back about possibly doing a class on reading food labels, because I'm one of those people in the grocery store that turns around everything and reads everything, and I spend way too long at the store doing this. So if you have any ideas, something that you would like to see from us, we have a very varied team of people here on our ministry and at our church in general that know a lot about different health principles. So just let us know. Yes? All of our events will be posted on our page, yes. And our YouTube channel. Thank you, Pastor. Anything else? Excellent. So stretch out a bit. We'll be laying out the food here shortly, and then thank you again.